We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Liberty, the very basis for the great experiment known as the U.S. Constitutional Republic, the foundation upon which all our rights and freedoms are built, our bulwark against tyranny. But is liberty still the defining characteristic of this country as we approach the end of 2022? Welcome back into Liberty Nation Radio, a production of LibertyNation.com and heard from coast to coast on the Radio America Network. This is Tim Donner, longtime host of this program and now frequent contributor, sitting in this week for Mark Angelides. As the unique creatures known as Americans, we crave liberty and we crave order, but order won't do without liberty, and liberty won't do without order. So where do we stand right now with the unique principle upon which the United States of America was founded? Ordered liberty. It's the tension between order and liberty that we've sought to manage over the almost 250 years of this unique constitutional republic. And the tension has boiled over in recent years, with the left demanding ever more order and the right demanding restoration of the liberty, which has always served as the foundation for our way of life. We will examine these questions today from multiple angles with our power panel, the political with Liberty Nation socio-political correspondent Jeff Charles, the legal with LN Legal Affairs editor Scott Cosenza, and the economic with Liberty Nation's economic guru Andrew Moran. So Jeff, let's start with you as you see it. How did liberty do on the ballot in these 2022 midterm elections?
Yeah, Tim, I don't think liberty did very well. I think this was just more indicative of an overall reality in America. I think that people increasingly are not wanting to be free, are not really understanding what that means. I mean, we saw how the nation reacted over the COVID-19 pandemic with the lockdown orders. They told everybody just be a couple of weeks to slow the spread. But I mean, people who are savvy knew that it wasn't going to end after 2 weeks. And look at how much the nation was willing to tolerate. And I think that was even reflected in these past midterm elections, where the people who were pushing for those onerous restrictions, as well as others, were not really soundly punished for what they were doing, despite the fact that they have mismanaged the running of the country since they took power. These midterms were not a repudiation of those who are threatening liberty. And I think that that's where it stands today right now. So I'm hoping that's a kind of a dire analysis. So hopefully my colleagues will have something more positive to say.
Well, Scott, what about you? How did liberty do as you see it in these midterm elections?
Well, I tend to think that liberty wasn't on the ballot per se. And so it's what we saw during these elections, I don't think is, we can attribute to a vote up or down on liberty. But I think that Jeff is right in one fundamental way, which is that the people who did do so many lockdowns and were responsible for so much of the affronts to liberty that we've suffered recently did not seem to pay a strong price. I think they can chalk that up to the successful salesmanship, that somehow there was a vote on the existential nature of a constitutional democracy at the polls. That's democracy at stake, right? I think that was an effective sales pitch, which took that out of it. And I'm hoping, Tim and Jeff and Andrew, that at some point soon we'll see a reckoning for liberty for those who did, author those lockdowns. And there's been some indication that we will, Tim. We've seen a couple of measures now to grant like some kind of amnesty for some of these folks for what they've done. And that's all I think about, a guilty conscience and a fear for what's coming. And I hope it does come. I hope that the whirlwind reaches those scolds and censors who kept us locked down in a way that I thought was, unconstitutional, illegal, immoral. You pick your parade of horribles.
There's several adjectives you could use,
Yeah.
right? Not to mention adverbs. Andrew, as you see it, to what extent are voters demanding more liberty as opposed to more order?
I don't see anyone demanding more liberty. It seems like every election between 2016 and probably heading into 2024 is just propping up Donald Trump endorsed Republican candidates. All I see when it comes to the last election, the midterm elections. I can only think of two names who are really liberty oriented candidates who won their re-elections handily, was Senator Rand Paul and Representative Thomas Melcy. Anyone else, I can't think of anyone else who really were champions of liberty who won their elections or lost their elections. So overall, I don't see voters demanding liberty. I just see voters trying to kick the other guy out and just, benefiting the programs that they want. I mean, Democrats, their whole thing was give me more abortions, let me kill more babies, and Republicans were just, for a lot of Republicans, was let me help the Trump candidate win.
So, Jeff, how did the pandemic and its ongoing, consistent, persistent challenge to both order and liberty change the way that we view both order and liberty?
That's a tough question. I think it really showed who's for liberty and who's not. And what I was saying earlier about the liberty in the midterms, referring to Democrats, because there were plenty of Republicans who were more than willing to use that pandemic to lock people down, to restrict schools, to restrict, even just going to the grocery store. And, even in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott signed yet another emergency order for COVID, and he's not the only one. Republicans are in this instance just seem to be diet Democrats, really. So I think that it really showed who was for liberty and who wasn't. And unfortunately, as far as leadership goes, you don't have a whole lot of people who were wanting to preserve liberty. Now, at the grassroots level, you have people from all walks of life and from all political stripes who are pushing for liberty, even beyond just the COVID issue. But none of those people seem to be in charge of either party right now.
Indeed, both parties don't seem to be putting a premium on liberty. Scott, did you see the pandemic as an excuse used by the left to control the population to a greater extent, which seems to be their usual method of operation?
You say it to me like there's some debatable question there. I don't understand how the response is.
I'm giving you a softball. I'm putting it on a tee for you to hit out of the park, counselor.
Right on the bag, right?
Yeah, it's because you're talking to a lawyer, and lawyers never ask questions that they don't already know the answer to.
Precisely. Thank you, Jeff.
The answer, Tim, is yes. I do see that. I mean, just from the, I think for me, the moment that that it revealed, and by the way, I want to just reference Jeff's earlier answer when he had said that at one point that everybody knew it was going to be longer than 2 weeks, but that wasn't the case for me. I actually thought, gee, they're going to have trouble locking everyone down for a whole 2 weeks. I had no idea that my fellow Americans would take to such drastic restrictions for so long. For me, Tim, I remember when a guy in California, I think he was like kayaking or something like that, but he was out in the middle of nowhere on a beach, and he got basically arrested by the authorities. And that to me was the moment when I really had sort of tragic thoughts about our liberty and what the state was doing. That, if they said, hey, we're shutting down the schools or they have to have masks, but go outside and, go to a park or something like that, that would at least be somewhat consistent. But the idea that we had to be masked, locked down, and then, of course, jabbed however many times we're up to now. It's profoundly disturbing and was used by those progressives to crush our liberty. Yep. That's a big affirmative.
But it was okay, Scott, because if you were locked down, you still got all this stimulus money, you got all this free money, you got sweetened unemployment benefits. So hey, you got all this free stuff for just sitting home and watching
obesity,
Netflix.
Diabetes, whatever, right?
But also, if you want to add to Scott's point, it wasn't even just, being alone and kayaking. These parents who brought their kids to playgrounds were arrested because they put tape around the playground. Even though if you look at all the data show that outdoor transmission, contracting COVID outdoors was very minimal. I mean, even the early days in China, if you remember about it, Chinese data, one person was sitting on a bench, they got COVID. That was it when it comes to getting infected with coronavirus.
I think it's also worth noting the mental impact that this has had on a lot of people when it comes to engineering the way they think. I mean, I hate to use the term brainwashing. But it's like every time I go out now, if I see, I'm in Texas, and if I see somebody still wearing a mask, I'm like, what are you doing? Because one, it was never meant to protect you. It was supposed to protect everybody else ostensibly. But now, I mean, COVID is pretty much on it. It's already out. So like you're still wearing a mask. Every now and then I still see people in their cars alone wearing masks. So I think the fear that they used to justify these actions, it still remains, and that's scary. It reminds me about 9/11. They used the fear of terrorism to pass the Patriot Act, right? Yeah. So to me, it's just the same story, just in a different situation.
Okay, well, thanks, Jeff. And Andrew and Scott, we're going to take a quick break and then come back to return to our roundtable discussion on the state of liberty and order circa 2022.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe space.
You only did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.